Okay, does that look ragtag enough? Yeah, should be pretty good. Nice little setup. Yeah, I am here in my basement, joined by the voices in my head, because I always film in my basement. I'm on the other side. Anyway, this is going to be a slight departure from my usual style of video, where I just sit down on the couch and talk about animals, because I created this little presentation here for a class assignment. Well, not a class assignment, for one of my classes, and so I figured that the information was worthy enough to share publicly on the internet, where there are no takesy backsies. So, if I get something wrong, I will be sure to correct it at some point, whether in the comments or as I am speaking, so as to hopefully prevent the spread of misinformation. Now, I am here today, as the thumbnail and title suggests, to go on a bit of a DDT rant. So, my name is Akil Sundar. You can call me Akil. You can call me an amateur zoologist. I am here to talk about the key chemical properties and the environmental impact of the chemical dichloro diphenyl trichloroethane, or DDT for short. Now, here's our little timeline here. This chemical right here on the projector screen is DDT. Dichloro, it's got two chlorines sticking off. Diphenyl, got two phenyl groups, those are the rings. Usually if you have just 6 carbons in a ring with 3 double bonds, that's going to be benzene. But this here, because it's in a group, it is phenyl. It's a phenyl ring. Trichloro, those 3 chlorines. Ethane. The reason it's ethane is because there are 2 carbons with a single bond here. That's a little too chemistry for you. Just know this is DDT. This is the molecule that we were talking about. Now, here's a little timeline. In 1939, the insecticidal activity of DDT, so its ability to kill insects, was discovered by the Swiss chemist Paul Hermann Mueller. Now, of course, DDT had been known about for maybe about 90 years prior to this. I do not remember the exact date, but its insecticidal properties, its properties of killing insects, preferably without as much of a detriment to humans as well, was discovered by Dr. Mueller. In 1943, it was added to U.S. Army supply lists. Why is that important? Well, a little something called World War II broke out in 1939, the same year that DDT's insecticidal activity was discovered. And 1941 is when the United States entered the war. The reason the United States entering the war is significant is because they entered in retaliation against the Japanese forces in World War II, and Japan was attacking from the Pacific side. So the U.S. would engage in a ton of brutal skirmishes on the Pacific front, whether it was naval battles or brutal island hopping campaigns in order to try to defeat Japanese forces. In 1943, DDT was utilized in the conflict in order to ward off malaria-carrying mosquitoes during the war, helping save thousands of lives. And as a result of its use during the war, and maybe some slight propaganda afterwards, DDT was approved for public sale and usage by the government, and it was promoted by the government and, of course, the pesticide industry for agricultural and household use. And when we say it was used everywhere, I do not mean that lightly. Planes would go overhead, dousing the fields below them in DDT. People would spray workers up and down in DDT. They would fumigate every corner of their houses, so much so there's a ton of, it looked as if there was a ton of smoke in the house. And this is all, this was all in an effort to kill off mosquitoes and other household or agricultural insects, such as caterpillars. Now, what are the effects of that? We'll get into that shortly. In 1948, our good old friend Paul Hermann Mueller was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine for his discovery of DDT, and because of its common use at this point. It was used not just in the United States, but worldwide. Propaganda and advertisements absolutely helped, but its use was widespread and extremely common. Now, in 1962, Rachel Carson published the memoir Silent Spring, and I cannot recommend Silent Spring enough. It is an absolutely incredible memoir. It is entrancing and heartbreaking. If you have not read it, give it a shot. It is incredible. If you have read it, hopefully you feel the same way about it that I did, but I'll elaborate on why I feel this way about Silent Spring in just a moment. But the big thing about Silent Spring is that the whole premise of the memoir is that it points out the environmental impact of DDT. So, people began to notice. Silent Spring was a bestseller for Rachel Carson. She unfortunately passed away a couple years afterward in 1964, but that's not exactly related to DDT. She wasn't assassinated or anything. She just passed, at least as far as I know. But the big thing is that this caused an upswing in public awareness of DDT and what it was doing to the world around them, and perhaps even to them. So, in 1972, the agricultural use of DDT was banned in the United States with help from the newly formed Environmental Protection Agency. The same EPA is currently run by climate change deniers. Anyway, in 2004, a worldwide ban on agricultural use was formalized with the Stockholm Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants. However, the issue with this is that it wasn't effective enough, and DDT is still used in many developing or third world nations nowadays. Of course, its use is a little limited. It's not, carpet bombs with DDT anymore. It's more of, we're using DDT to wipe down our houses to get rid of mosquitoes. All right, so here's some major chemical reactions. Here's our good old friend dichloro-diphenyl trichloroethane, DDT. One reaction includes the addition of hydrogen gas, which pops off this little chlorine here and creates a lovely chemical byproduct, two chemical byproducts. This is dichlorodiphenyl dichloroethane, or DDD for short, but it's a pretty deadly molecule, and it has its own effects. But one of the side effects of this reaction is that it produces the wonderful hydrochloric acid. Now, hydrochloric acid is an extremely strong acid. It's also what is in our stomach acid. So obviously it is very strong, and if it is ingested, it can cause some pretty bad effects. Now, another reaction takes the same molecule. You don't add hydrogen gas, and you get this guy. This is diphenyl dichloroethylene. The reason it's ethylene and not ethane is because of this double bond right here, ethylene. So that's DDE. That also gives us some more hydrochloric acid. Now, one more thing, and I'm actually going to dish this out for a second. One more thing about DDT and some of these other substituents is that it can sometimes this CCl3 group at the top is very, very reactive. So it can actually pop off and form what's called a radical, it can also form ions, but more importantly, it can form a radical. Radicals are really reactive compounds. Basically, this carbon has an extra electron, and of course it has the 3 chlorines, but it doesn't like having one unpaired electron. So it's going to try its best to form bonds with something else, and as a result, it is really reactive. It likes to attack other molecules. It can also pop off one of those chlorines, forming a chlorine radical, chlorine with one unpaired electron, which is also not good because chlorine radicals actually go and attack oxygen in the atmosphere. Sorry, not oxygen in the atmosphere, it's worse. They attack ozone gas in the atmosphere. The reason that's important is because ozone is the molecule that protects us that protects the Earth from ultraviolet radiation from the sun. It's basically the Earth's hazmat suit. So if you have enough chlorines, they will attack a ton of ozone molecules. They will knock an oxygen off of those. It goes from O3 to O2, and O2 is basically useless in protection against ultraviolet radiation. So it reduces the Earth's defenses. It pokes a hole in the hazmat suit, so to speak. DDT, in combination with other molecules called chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs for short, helped cause a massive hole over the ozone layer that formed in the 1980s. Fortunately, FEMA and NASA noticed in 1983 and were able to put a stop to it. The use of chlorofluorocarbons in aerosols and refrigerators was banned, and so that hole was somewhat alleviated. But the moral of the story is that DDT in general is a really reactive and, as a result, a pretty dangerous molecule. Before we talk about some more side effects, we got to talk about how DDT works, though. So it opens what are called voltage-gated sodium channels in the body. So these are important because these are basically how, these are present in the nerves. These are basically how the body sends signals from the body to the brain or across the brain. So the nerve has a state of polarization. When when it's depolarized, it's sending a signal. Then it gets repolarized, so the signal shuts itself off. If it's triggered for a long time, that can result in bad things. What DDT does is it goes and it blocks this channel. Well, it opens this channel, it prevents it from closing. So the membrane, the neuron continues to be depolarized. It's never repolarized. So that signal is constantly being sent. Now, this is good in small doses on insects, obviously. It leads to a sustained state of neuron excitedness, is what I'm trying to get at. That can result in spasms and eventually death. Obviously in small amounts. This is going to be really effective for insects, which is why it was such an effective insecticide. But it does have some issues. Now, some side effects, and this is a long slide here. Over time, insects began to develop pesticide resistance. So DDT was not as effective on insects after a point. They began to develop a resistance to it. The toxins would also accumulate in the ecosystem because, once again, we're carpet bombing the place, and as a result, some of that DDT would linger on the crops, it would linger on the ground, it would be carried by the wind, it would end up in the water, and I especially mentioned the water. It would also end up in the ground, and this is important because the soil half-life, or how long it takes for half the DDT in the soil to go away or turn into a different molecule, ranges from 22 days to 30 years, depending on the ecosystem and environmental conditions. It's even worse in the water because the aquatic half-life of that is 150 years. That's how long it takes for half the DDT in an aquatic system to go away, which is absolutely not good. Let me put that in perspective. I am filming this in the year 2025, so if DDT was sprayed in the 1950s, in the middle of its heyday, let's just say 1955. No, 1950. 1955 to be exact. Let's use 1955. If DDT was sprayed in 1955 and it ended up in the soil, well, it could have still remained there until 1985. It went from the 50s to the 80s. It went from, hold up, let me get my numbers right. Yeah, it went from Eisenhower to freaking Ronald Reagan. That's a really long time. Now, it's even worse in aquatic ecosystems, because if DDT was sprayed in 1950 and it ended up in an aquatic ecosystem, that DDT is still there to this day. It's only been 70 years since 1955. Yeah, 70 years may seem like a long time to us trivial humans, but DDT has a half-life twice as long as our average lifespans. That's incredible. It's also incredibly concerning, given what I'm about to talk about next. So, obviously it has nervous system effects. It has those spasms I talked about. It can cause tremors, headaches, seizures. It can even cause epilepsy. And that's obviously not good. Now, it also has some reproductive effects because it can lead to things like infertility, premature births, and birth defects, and so on and so forth. can lead to increased cancer rates because it's so volatile that could cause mutations, resulting in rapid cell division, uncontrolled cell division, which is what cancer is. That can lead to a tumor. And I don't need to fearmonger about cancer. Cancer is bad enough on its own. Screw cancer. Now, immunodeficiency. It can also affect the immune system, the body's responses to different illnesses. So even if the DDT itself doesn't kill you, it can leave room for an illness that does, much in the same way that AIDS and measles do. Now, it can also lead to endocrine disruption, where all your hormones are thrown out of whack, which can cause numerous physical and psychological issues as well. And it could potentially lead to increased autism rates. Now, I know that autism is kind of a buzzword nowadays. Autism is a genetic issue. It is caused due to something going on with the genes that affects development in some major way. Now, we don't know if it's a direct cause in increased autism rates, but there is a correlation because DDT helps increase some of those risk factors for autism, such as what I was talking about earlier with premature births and birth defects. So like underweight premature babies are more likely to develop autism. Now, here's some of the worst parts of it. Here's some of the worst parts. Obviously, you've got the atmospheric ozone depletion that I was just talking about, but you've also got a generational impact. I know it's a little hard to see on the slide. It's kind of hard to fit all this in, but there is a generational impact to DDT because I was looking at a 2021 study fairly recently that showed that DDT can linger across multiple generations. Like it can stay in human bodies for multiple generations. And that's obviously not good because that means that it's not just like the direct children of people working in the fields that have these effects, but also their children and their children and so on and so forth. And that's how far-reaching DDT is as a toxin. It's not just an insecticide. It affects us, humans, as well. I'll get a little more into the toxin accumulation. So here's a bog standard ecosystem where I am in Utah. Here's a mosquito, gets eaten by a barn swallow, gets eaten by a Cooper's hawk, gets eaten by a bald eagle. You can also have mosquitoes get eaten by rainbow trout or cutthroat trout, which are also eaten by bald eagles. So obviously you got the apex predator, you got the secondary predators and the tertiary predators. You've got the primary, well, you don't really have a primary consumer you do have a primary consumer in here. You don't really have an autotroph, which is an organism that produces, energy on its own, like a plant or cyanobacteria. But I'd argue that for the purposes of what I'm going for here, you don't really need it. Now, here, let's just say that mosquitoes have X amount of DDT in them, right? Doesn't seem too bad, it's just a little bit. It's not too significant, but that has a chain reaction effect across the entire ecosystem because those barn swallows aren't just going to be eating one mosquito. They're going to be eating multiple mosquitoes. And so there's going to be even more DDT buildup in them. It's even worse for the Cooper's hawks because they're eating a ton of those barn swallows. So the DDT builds up in them even more exponentially. And it's even worse for the bald eagles because they're eating so many of those Cooper's hawks. And they're also not just eating the Cooper's hawks, they're also eating the rainbow trout and the trout that are eating the mosquitoes. So the toxins start mounting in them even more. And it's horrific. It can mount to such a high level that it can cause death in an apex predator, such as a bald eagle, the national symbol of America, which we did such a good job protecting apparently. They were actually listed as endangered until fairly recently. Now, it's pretty recently that they've been taken off the least concern list. Well, that they've been moved up to least concern. But, not just bald eagles, but also things like foxes and coyotes and wolves and bears. All because an ecosystem is like a Jenga tower. Everything depends on everything else for support. If you knock out that bottom peg that's holding everything together, the entire thing's gonna collapse. That's why it's important that we study it here. It's even worse because it can also affect us. Humans are also a part of the food chain. We rely on crops that may have been dusted with DDT. We rely on we rely on livestock that may be consuming DDT, which puts us right in the middle of the cycle that I was describing earlier. We are not immune from this. We are just as heavily evolved because we rely on nature more than we like to think. Okay? We are a part of the natural ecosystem. So, let's talk about how DDT became so popular. During and after World War II, there was a wide set of advertisements and propaganda that painted malaria and mosquitoes as enemy number one and claimed that DDT was the only solution. It's this sort of miracle pesticide that kills everything. You don't have to worry about malaria ever again. And so because of that, it was used obviously freaking everywhere, not just in the US, but in Europe and in Asia as well. And probably the most famous of these advertisements is this one right here, which is specifically targeted towards kids and their parents. Yeah, that's a dark note, isn't it? Now, that leads to the big question, why does this matter? So there is a reason that I'm talking about this right here, right now. It has been, let me do some quick math real quick. It has been 63 years since Silent Spring has been published. It has been 53 years since DDT has been banned from agricultural use in the United States. So why do we still care about DDT? Well, for one, it's still in the friggin' water supply. It's still in the water. There's not much that we can do about it. It has a half-life in there, an aquatic half-life of 150 years. But the big thing about DDT, in my opinion, the biggest lesson that we can learn from this is there are two. One, watch what you're putting in your bodies, do the science, do the chemistry, figure out exactly what these molecules are doing, and if they're bad, try to cut them out of your life. But second and most importantly, this episode, in my opinion, displayed how important the public opinion is. Because it's not just Silent Spring that got DDT removed from agricultural use, like banned for agricultural use. It wasn't Rachel Carson published a book and then the United States government was like, oh, this woman published a book. Maybe this is bad. Maybe we should shut it all down. No, the US government never does that. What this shows is how important the public is, how important you are. Because if it wasn't for the public outcry, and if it wasn't for the public reacting to Rachel Carson's Silent Spring and getting the attention of their legislators, that ban might have never happened. And imagine what would happen in that instance, right? So that's why all of this is important. It shows that everybody, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, you have an impact. You have a say. There are a lot of things I could extend this to, some of them peaceful, some of them violent, and I would prefer to stay on this platform and not have anything bad happen to me, so I'm not going to go into examples, but what I can say is you matter. This is why knowledge is power. You have the ability to gather information, to learn about the world around you, to figure out what exactly is going on with your body, and you have the ability to get people to change their minds. We all have the ability, if we all work together, to make the government change its mind. That's what happened here. That's what's happened on so many different issues in the past. That's what will happen forever. That's the point of democracy. So what I'm trying to say is You matter, okay? Don't let anybody, and I mean anybody, tell you otherwise. You're not just a cog in, well, you are a cog in the machine, but you are an essential cog. You are important. You are integral to all of this. And if you take a stand and you get others to take a stand, there's nothing that you can't accomplish. And don't just take my word for it. I'm a scrawny 19-year-old kid who barely has any life experience. Look at what happened with DDT. Look at what's happened with all sorts of actions throughout history, like the civil rights movement, like the struggle against apartheid, like the Indian independence movement, like the Irish independence movement. Take a stand, follow your heart, and you will persevere. You got this, okay? We're all living in this world. We got to share it the best we can. We have to share it with each other. We got to share it with the natural world as well. We got to share it with the trees and the fungi and the animals and the bacteria even. And we got to do a dang good job of it. Unfortunately, we're not doing that. There's a lot that we can work on, but I have a feeling. And it could be a hunch, could be delusion, I don't know, but I have a feeling we're all going to pull through, okay? You got this. We got this. Anyway, that's about it for now. That's it for my little DDT rant, as I am so calling it, as shown by the title and the thumbnail. So I leave you with one final note, and that is, oh, there goes my laptop. That's turned off. There's my screensaver. Anyway, my final note is this. You are important. Oh goodness, I should probably, there we go. I'll turn that back on so that I have enough light for my little ending spiel here. So that's about it. Remember, you are important. You contain multitudes. Okay? You matter. And obviously, the entire world matters too. So next time you're out for a walk, or you're just like sitting on the grass, be sure to look at the world around you. Be sure to look at the world underneath your feet. And remember that you're not alone. You are important. Everything around us has a purpose. You have a purpose. And you, my friend, are extraordinary. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me through my little rant here. My name is Akil Sundar. I'm an amateur zoologist, and I'll see you in the next one.